Okay, we're back on trial and jury's in.
Man, sorry for the delay. Mr. Nelson.
Your Honor, at this time the defense rests.
Thank you. Mr. Blackwell, does the state have rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
So the jury doesn't have any idea that normally the defense doesn't get a second bite at the apple. But now, where the defense will get a second bite of the apple is in closing, more stacking in the government's favor. The prosecution gives their closing arguments, then the defense gives their closing arguments, and then the prosecution gets a second bite at the jury, and they get to give another closing to the jury. So the prosecution gets to talk to the jury twice in closing. The defense only gets to do it once. A lot of people don't realize that, and I wish more juries realize that, because that would cause them to hold the government more accountable and raise the bar, because they have everything stacked in their favor.
Good morning, Your Honor, counsel, ladies and gentlemen. The state will recall to the stand Dr. Martin Tobin.
And just for the record, if you could restate your name and if you feel comfortable, take the mask off.
My name is Martin Tobin.
Mr. Blackwell.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Dr. Tobin.
Mr. Blackwell?
Thank you for rejoining us.
I really hope he brings up the hidden test so they get a mistrial and laugh my ass off.
Just a few follow-up questions to ask you in rebuttal. But first, just so you're introduced to the jury, you're a pulmonologist.
Correct. Lung specialist. Yeah.
A critical care physician.
Yeah. Intensive care doctor.
And you studied the physiology of breathing for 46 years.
Correct. Yeah.
I want to first ask you about the issue of Mr. Floyd's potential exposure to carbon monoxide.
Yes.
Were you able to hear testimony regarding this yesterday?
Yes, I was.
Were you able to see this particular slide and the highlighted statement at the bottom? In 7 minutes, Mr. Floyd's carboxyhemoglobin could have increased by 10 to 18%.
Correct. Yeah, I saw that.
Would you first just tell us right off the bat, do you agree with that proposition that's highlighted there?
No, I do not.
Now, would you tell us what carboxyhemoglobin is?
Yeah. Carboxyhemoglobin is when the carbon monoxide combines with the protein in the blood that's called the hemoglobin. And so it's the combination of the carbon monoxide and that protein in the blood.
Now, you realize when these experts are defending their opinion, it's personal, and they're biased to their opinion. I mean, you just can't get over that. So this guy's not only trying to help the prosecution, but he's defending his own name and his own opinion, and he wants to disagree with the other guy. And experts do that quite oftenly. You know, one expert will say something that the other guy's like, that's freaking total bullshit. And so that's where this guy is coming from. So he's going to probably be a little bit better witness because it's a little personal to him.
And why is carboxyhemoglobin, again, important?
It's important because when the carbon monoxide binds to the hemoglobin, it displaces the oxygen off the hemoglobin. So you need the oxygen on the hemoglobin. You don't want the carboxy in it. It takes it over.
Then do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty as to whether this statement that Mr. Floyd's carboxyhemoglobin could have increased by 10 to 18% is reliable?
No, I believe it is not reliable.
Would you tell the ladies and gentlemen why that statement is not reliable?
I base it on the arterial blood gas that was obtained when Mr. Floyd was in Hennepin County.
Please, sidebar.
Did he just bring up the test? Oh my God! If he brought up that freaking test, he shouldn't ask for a sidebar. He should have immediately jumped up on a record and said, Your Honor, I want a mistrial. I mean, I would have freaking had a fit in front of the jury, but we'll see.
Dr. Tobin, as you prepare to tell us why these results, in your opinion, are not reliable, could you please help the jury to understand something about oxygen saturation testing in the blood?
Right. So,
oh shit, I think he did bring up that test. Oh my God.
if you have, like was done in Mr. Floyd when he went to Hennepin County, he had an arterial blood gas obtained. So that's sticking a needle into the artery at the wrist, and you take out the blood. And then on the blood gas measurements, you measure a number of different items on that, like the pressure of oxygen in the blood, the pressure of carbon dioxide, the amount of acid in the blood, called the pH. And you get all these different measurements, and you also get the oxygen saturation. And that is how much of the hemoglobin.
I thought they got the oxygen saturation from the finger oxygen tests. It sounds like he's talking about the test that he's not supposed to talk about.
The protein in the blood that carries the oxygen, how much of that hemoglobin is saturated with oxygen. And we know in Mr. Floyd that it was 98% saturated.
So 98% saturated with oxygen?
With oxygen when they measured it in Hennepin County. And that was 9/16, the time frame.
When they measured it in Hennepin County, I thought they measured it at the hospital. Well, maybe the hospital's in Hennepin. Man, it sounds like this guy keeps referring to the damn test.
So if we know that there's an oxygen saturation of 98%, does that tell us anything whatsoever?
Yes, I'm sorry, I interrupt. I apologize.
Does that tell us anything whatsoever about what the carbon monoxide
You didn't interrupt him. He likes to ask 13 questions in one statement.
content could have been at a maximum?
Yes, it does. It tells us that if the hemoglobin is saturated at 98%, it tells you all there was for everything else is 2%, and so the maximum amount of carbon monoxide would be 2%. It tells you the maximum amount of carboxyhemoglobin.
But again, he said when it binds to it, that finger test does not pick that up.
That was what was mentioned yesterday. The maximum amount is 2%. It doesn't even tell you that it is 2%. It could be something else. But 2% of carboxyhemoglobin is within the normal range. You and I have levels of carboxyhemoglobin of somewhere between 0 and 3.
And so in other words, as to the statement that his carboxyhemoglobin could have increased by 10 to 18%, in your view, that's not possible.
It's simply wrong.
And it was at most 2%.
It's not possible. Of course it's possible. That's inappropriate. It is possible. Hopefully the defense will clear that up. If you sit in a garage with a car running, you're going to get higher than 2%.
At most 2%.
Normal.
Which is normal.
New subject to discuss with you. You might recall, if you were listening to the testimony, my discussing with Dr. Fowler the hypopharynx.
Yes, I remember.
And you might recall I spent some time asking him about what research he had done on the potential for pressure.
See, he's given testimony instead of asking a damn question.
On the back to narrow the hypopharynx.
Yeah, I recall that.
Do you recall him saying he had canvassed the literature and he could not find anything?
I'm sorry?
Do you recall him saying he had reviewed the research and that he could not find anything?
Yes, I recall him saying that.
Are you able to enlighten or give any information to the jury on the nature of the research on the hypopharynx and how it narrows with compression in the prone position?
Yeah. So, the research on this, which is extensive, is really in the scientific literature. It's in the physiological literature. And then that is applied over to clinical medicine. So the type of studies that are done are not really done in terms of ordinary clinical research. It's much more physiological, much more scientific of how the body works. And there's about probably at least a dozen, maybe 20 studies that show the relationship between how that if you lower the size of the lungs, you must get a decrease in the size of the hypopharynx. All of the studies show that.
And then are there studies then that look at whether the pressure on the neck narrows the hypopharynx?
No. Because when we do research, we try and do research on studies that might be puzzling, that you would be kind of expecting a bit of a surprise. If you think about sticking your fingers into your neck, you know you're going to narrow the hypopharynx. That's not the kind of research that somebody is going to want to do. It's so common sense that you would know that that's going to happen. You can do it on yourself if you want. And as soon as you put pressure here, you can immediately sense that.
Only problem was pressure wasn't there. The pressure was on the back.
Your upper airway is narrowing.
Dr. Tobin, that is all we wanted to clarify with you this morning.
Okay, so did this guy really hurt him or help him that much? I'm not sure. So the defense has to evaluate whether I want to get this guy off the stand or do I want to question him, maybe not help me. Maybe it helps me a little bit, but now I give the prosecution a chance to come back and keep him on a stand longer. So that's what the defense should be kind of evaluating right now.
Sure. Let's do a stretch break in place.
Stretch Blake in place. What?
until quarter 2, so we'll reconvene at that time. There's the jury. We're going to actually have a recess now until quarter 2, so we'll reconvene at that time.
Okay, so whatever's going on. I wonder if they're going to talk about the test he brought up. Because, see, now the defense, if he brought up that test, the defense is like, Your Honor, I've got to have him clarify that test that he brought up. And when I ask him about the test, he's going to bring out that the test was done. And you said the jury can't hear it, but because the prosecution opened the door and allowed their witness to bring it up, I have to address it. And if I have to address it, then he's going to talk about it. And I don't want to violate your order, but it's not fair if I can't address it because the prosecution brought him up there and let him say it. So I think that's what's going to be going on in this little break where they go back there and they try to figure out. And, I mean, the judge said if he brings it up, I'm calling a mistrial. Now, the reason the judge doesn't want to do a mistrial is he works for the government and he knows it costs a lot of money and and it takes a lot of time. And the juries have wasted their time. And the court has been tied up in all this time. And all the witnesses are alive and testimony's in and about to give it to the jury. And do I want to give a mistrial and make everybody do everything over again? Or do I want to say, you know what, I don't think it's that serious. You can appeal it, but we're going to continue on. So that's kind of what he's doing. And when a judge does a mistrial, he gets heat from everybody. The DA is pissed because he's got to recall the witnesses. He cost him a lot of money. The DA may come out and do a statement saying that judge was inappropriate. The mistrial was wrong. And he cost you taxpayers, another $1 million that we have to invest now to retry this case because the judge made. So the judges are kind of like, I don't want to get smeared by the DA and I don't want to get smeared by the county for wasting money. And you know what? The defense always freaking is on the losing end of any of these issues. So let's see what happens when they come back.
Just have a few follow-up questions for you, Dr. Tobin. Thank you. In terms of the carbon monoxide testing that you referenced, you would agree with me that the most common technology available in hospital laboratories for analyzing the blood is the multiple wavelength spectrophotometer, also known as the co-oximeter, correct?
Right.
Yeah. Now, in terms of your testimony relevant to the research, you referenced that there were 12 to 20 studies, and correct me if I'm wrong,
Yep.
that an increase in pressure on the lungs would increase the narrowing of the hypopharynx.
Not quite.
Okay, can you just say it again?
Yeah, I mean, it is that if you decrease the size of the lungs, that you will get narrowing of the hypopharynx.
And that research would be in physiological journals?
It would be in physiological journals. There's some journals that will be a blend of physiology plus clinical. It will be, but it's primarily going to be in physiological oriented journals.
And those physiological oriented journals would be included within the general search for medical literature?
I mean, if you go into PubMed, it would be included in PubMed, yes.
And you have not produced any of those 12 to 20 articles for the state or active review?
I mean, I listed several articles in my report of January the 27th. There's several articles in that. I can tell you them if you want it.
Specifically that stand for that proposition?
Regarding the relationship between lung volume and the hypopharynx.
Okay. I have no further questions.
No, Your Honor. All right. Thank you, Doctor. You may step down, Your Honor.
Wow, I don't think that was good enough. Why didn't he get into the oxygen on the finger and that test is lower and it wouldn't pick up if carbon dioxide connected to it, because that test on the finger for the oxygen, I wonder if they told him he couldn't go there because it was going to provoke him to bring out the other one. Man, I don't think that cleared up anything. Did this witness, now see, this is what you got to evaluate. Did this witness hurt or help the defense? Is the jury like, why did you bring this guy back? Or is the jury like, man, I'm glad he came back. I really got a lot out of that. I don't know. Nobody knows what the jury, where their mindset was. We can speculate what we're seeing and hearing, but nobody knows what the jury is thinking or where their mindset's at.
Thank you very much.
The state of Minnesota, rest.
Mr. Nelson, anything further? All right, members of the jury, the evidence is now complete for this case. Next step for you is to listen to closing arguments and then retire for deliberations. That'll occur on Monday. the attorneys and I will still be working. We have a few administrative matters and legal matters to take care of. Most importantly, going over the law that I will give you in my instructions. And that takes quite a while. And so we are not going to change our schedule. We're not going to close tomorrow. We're going to close on Monday. And so with that, remember, you will be sequestered. We have some of your questions, and we're going to try and answer as many of those as we can. I think the one thing that you need to know today as you leave is, how much do I pack? If I were you, I would plan for long and hope for short. Basically, it's up to the jury how long you deliberate, how long you need to come to a unanimous decision on any count. And so because that's entirely up to you, whether it's an hour or a week, it's entirely within your province. So that's how I would do it if I were you.
Okay, when he said an hour a week, jury deliberation, I think the shortest jury deliberation is either a minute or 14 minutes. And, you know, on a simple trial, and I think the one that was 1 minute was a, I don't know, it was some off the wall. And I think the longest jury deliberations was months. Or a month and a half or something. So most juries, depending on the complexity of the case, this is a complex case, and because they charged them with so many charges, they have to figure out what charge is which, and they have to go through each charge. When you charge, let's say you charge somebody with assaulting his wife, they have one thing to do. Did he assault her? Did they prove the case? Yeah, they proved it. They go in there. They go, okay, who thinks he's guilty? Everybody raise their hand, and they're done. Okay, we found a non-decision. In this case, they're going to go in there. Who thinks he's guilty of murder one? And you're going to have split vote. And they will either address that or not address it. Now, sometimes, if they do the lower included cases or charges, you have to go for the higher one first. And you have to get not guilty on that one or hung. And then move to the next one. Get not guilty or hung, and then move to the next one until you get a unanimous decision on one. But that's if the cases are lower included. But if I charge you with assaulting your wife, domestic violence, burglary because you forced your way in a house, if I charge you with disturbing a 911 call or preventing a 911 call because you ripped the phone out, and then I charge you with resisting arrest, they have to take each of those crimes and come to a verdict and deliberate on each one. So the more the crimes, the longer the jury deliberations. The more complex the case, the longer jury deliberations. OJ's trial was a pretty complex case. And, you know, multiple murders, a chase, all kind of evidence, the bloody glove, everything. And the jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before they came to their verdict. Because they had pretty much jury nullification. They had already decided they weren't going to find him guilty. So they had their minds made up. So if this jury has their mind made up that the cop is guilty, they could go in there in an hour and come back out. So people are like, how long will it be? And how long will it, what do you expect? It's basically hard to know. Normally a quick verdict is in favor of the prosecution because they already know that he's guilty. Now, you could have a quick verdict if the prosecution did a really shitty job and they were like, there ain't no way we're convicting this. Or if you have jury nullification, etc. You know, there's different things on how long it will go. In the Waco case, the government charged a bunch of Branch Davidian people, and the jury trial lasted 2 months. This trial lasted less than 2 weeks. In the Branch Davidian, it lasted 2 months. And the jurors acquitted. A jury lasted there 2 months. A jury acquitted 4 of the Branch Davidians of all charges. So it doesn't say how long that they deliberated. But anyway, how long they'll wait is a complete swag. It's a swinging wild ass guess. Nobody knows. Nobody can guess because nobody's in there with the jury. All right. So we'll end that there and see what happens next.